DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And welcome back, and we are back for some appetizers this evening. Some more appetizers this evening. Some more appetizers. And I got a little ahead of myself on the podcast yesterday, talking about Saints. We were talking about Saints preseason game that was before the podcast, or was before the I guess it would be in the appetizers that we're calling UFC 330 Makhachev versus Machado Garry. So we got a little ahead of ourselves in talking about what we were talking about, the Saints preseason game that was before UFC 330, which was the preseason game, the Saints versus the Jaguars, which that would have been the main course that became first. So we got main course coming before appetizers. So we got a little confused on yesterday, but no, we got our appetizers for you. So we're talking UFC 330, Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Garry. And man, this turned out to be a pretty good card, really. Initially, it didn't really look like on paper as really a great card. Like, yeah, the top of the card looked great. You had your two title cards or two title fights with the Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Garry fight, and then you had the women's strawweight bout between Mackenzie Dern versus Jillian Roberts. But then after that, not a lot of excitement and not a lot of superstar and name recognition and just star power after that. But hey, it's not really all about name recognition and star power. It's about what happens and what those fighters do in the cage. And really, you could maybe argue the least exciting and some of the worst fights to watch, just in watch value, were the co and the main event on this card. And so I really applaud myself, give myself a pat on the back for going back and watching the early prelims and the standard prelims on this card, because they were part of what made this card main course, as we were speaking to start this card in the Saints preseason, because it overlapped this card. But yes, there were some great fights that happened in the early and the standard prelims. So before I even get into the main card and get into my predictions, we're definitely going to go over those fights, because man, I think I maybe enjoyed the prelims more than I did the main card of UFC 330. And man, that seems to be really kind of, since UFC has kind of gone over, where I can't even remember, were they on Netflix? I don't know. Since they've gone 330. So this is UFC 330, Ian Machado Garry versus Islam Makhachev, and this happened just August 15th, 2026. So this past Saturday, and this happened at the Xfinity Mobile Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and United States. And the attendance was 19,238, and the total gate was 6.7 million. So of course, the numbers always definitely do good when they're not doing it just in their little venue that they do in Vegas, where I guess they've expanded the little place that they do in Vegas to where it actually has like can hold a couple thousand people now. That when before I didn't realize that little place in Vegas that they had before it only held like a couple hundred fans before. I guess that was for COVID, so I guess it made sense then. Uh, but hey, usually I just kind of gloss over the prelims and just kind of wait before really getting into it and getting into the main card and giving you I'm needing a menu. But because I spent so much extra time going over the prelims and really saying that I feel like the prelims were so much better than the main card and really enjoyed watching them so much, I'm just going to go ahead and say let's get a menu right now. So can I get a menu? And so let's get into the early prelims like right now. So of course I wasn't able to make any picks, but there's definitely some interesting picks and some interesting notes that were just kind of came out of this card like while watching it, going along. So we talked about the whole Rocky aspect of this card because it was in Philadelphia. So the Rocky and the underdog story and Philadelphia where it was aired. So we were looking for that somewhere on this card, and we were thinking, a good place for it to maybe happen would be, obviously Ian Machado Garry beating Islam Makhachev, keeping him from winning 17 fights in a row and breaking Anderson Silva's record. Well, we'll get to that later, but I maybe didn't get that there. Or just having a title change hands with Jillian Robinson maybe beating Mackenzie Dern. Well, maybe we didn't get that there. We have to wait till the end of the night to see if we get that. Or maybe getting a really nice retirement and send off for Edson Barbosa, the 40-year-old, over the 30-year-old Edson Ribovich. Well, and that would have been the curtain jerker for the main card. Well, I don't know. Maybe one won't get that. But hey, we don't have to wait till the main card to get our Rocky moment for UFC 330. We get it with the very first fight on the card, and it's for the early prelims. And this just sets the freaking tone for the entire card. And really, I wish I would have been able to watch this card live because it just made the rewatching the prelims just so awesome. And I was just so pumped and so juiced after the first fight on the card. And so this was a welterweight bout between Jeremiah Wells versus let's see, my T Becky Oria by or Roy by, and Mikey Becky was 15. Jeremiah Wells was a plus 1,500 underdog to my Becky. Yeah, my T Becky. Let's see, hold up. Let's see, we can reload. Mighty Becky Oribal. Yeah, Oribal. Mighty Becky Oribal. I had to get my pronunciation of that. Yeah, but he was a plus 1,500 to Mighty Becky Oribal. So I think he was the biggest underdog to him. And he's also 30, he is also like 39 years old. And he's from West Henstleton, Pennsylvania. So he's also from Pennsylvania. And so we got this guy, Mighty Becky Orabai, who's such like a huge, who's only also, he's also 28 years old and has been looked at as looking with how they're billing him as a future star in the UFC. And he was coming into this fight on a 3-fight winning streak. And in this fight, he was pretty much dominating Jeremiah Wells like constantly and just like dominating him anywhere the fight was going, whether it was on the ground or in the stand up. And he rocked Jeremiah Wells, just like constant pressure on Jeremiah Wells and was able to take him down pretty much at will. And like I said, rocked him in the stand-up game. Was pretty much had a couple chances where he was trying some submissions and was able to get Jeremiah Wells back and was trying some rear naked chokes, but Jeremiah Wells was doing a pretty good job at defending the rear naked chokes and things like that. But it was looking like it was just pretty much going to be a clear path to Mighty Bai or a buy or a buy to win this fight. Like he was, like I said, he's dominating Jeremiah Wells like the entire fight. But then around the 1 minute mark of the third round, Jeremiah Wells rocked Mighty Becky, and then Mighty Becky, it looked like he was already kind of slowing down in the third round, shot for a leg. And when he shot for that leg, Jeremiah Wells was able to sink in a Darce choke, and they're calling it also calling it a ninja choke in here. And he put him to sleep. He put him to sleep, and it was just nuts. And so it's calling a technical submission. So he wasn't even able to tap out. And Mighty Becky's got these. So he was just slumped out, like completely passed out from him being put to sleep from the ninja choke or the Darce choke, and like he was like just going insane after it, and he went outside the cage, and they got a lot of these a lot of his members of his team, Mighty Becky's, are like wearing like these hats, and there's like fans of his that are wearing these hats from like the region that he's from, and like the I don't know if it's the religion or the Orient that he's from, and it's got like Oriental like symbols and stuff on it. But he like went like right into his face and like screamed like right into his face. Man, I don't know. That was like one of the funniest things I've seen in a while in the UFC. But yeah, you got your UFC moment. Just to start off the card, the UFC 330, you got a plus 1500. Jeremiah Wells putting Mighty Becky to sleep when he was pretty much he was already up 2-0 in the fight. Like he was about to beat him at least on path to win by decision at least, if nothing else. So that card started out freaking crazy with the biggest upset. You got your Rocky moment right away. So I was like screaming and yelling how crazy that card started. I'm glad the card started as crazy as it did, because it definitely kind of fizzled out with the last two fights. Because I mean, the last two fights they were good, but it was definitely Jillian Robertson and Ian Machado Garry definitely playing a lot of defense. They were definitely defending, so they weren't so as to not get knocked out, or so not to get submitted, and so not to take a lot of damage from Mackenzie Dern or Islam Makhachev. Or at least that's what it seemed like. All right, and now on to the third fight on the early prelims. You had Neil Magny just outlasting, showing that he's stamina king, stamina lion over Ramiz Brahimaj, and yeah, it looked like Rahamiz was like dominating Neil Magny in the first round of that fight, but then had pretty much gassed himself out in the first round, which is just like that's like a Neil Magny classic. And then Neil Magny TKO'd him with punches, just absolutely wore on him and gassed him in the second half. Like, so that was a Neil Magny classic, where like basically just let Ramiz Brahimaj just beat on him in the first half, and then beat on him until the ref stopped it in the second round. So at the 3:20 mark of the second round, and then we got an awesome body knee to the body that just absolutely stunned a fighter, and then he got finished with elbows. That was the third fight, uh, I guess the main event of the early prelims. That was a lightweight bout. Lucas Fernando defeated Rafael Tobias with TKO with a brutal knee to the body that just absolutely stunned him, putting freezed old buddy, and then he got capped off, finished with some elbows at the 110 mark of the third round. So as you can see, this card started a lot better than it finished. At least just with the excitement, the watch value it did. And like I said, I'm very glad that I went back and watched this and didn't just like, oh, I watched the Saints preseason game. I'm good. I don't. Those fights probably weren't any good. Yes, they were. They were very good. And then, so now then, on to the prelims. The first fight on the prelims was a crazy back and forth fight between middleweight bout between Tristan Gore versus Vincent Lequi. And that was, so obviously that was a 3-round fight. Went all 5 minutes, five rounds. So that went 15 minutes fights, and that was a decision. So it was 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28. So I would have probably thought it was a closer fight, 29-28 with the one judge, because Vincent Lequi did land a really good knee at one point in that fight because, like I said, it was a back and forth, and they both were trying to take each other down at points in the fight, and both had landed some good shots in the stand up, and Vincent Lequi landed a really good knee at one point that hit Tristan Gore like in the lower jaw, and like not his teeth were like falling out like during the interview with Joe Rogan. He literally had like his teeth were like in the, I think it was the ref had like some of his teeth like in his gloved hand, like his medical gloved hand had some of his teeth from like his lower jaw, or lower teeth were lower jaw, like from his teeth, or teeth from his lower jaw were in his were holding them in his jaw, in his hand. It was freaking crazy. But yeah, I guess he won the fight, so he can buy some more new teeth, I guess. But yeah, that was crazy. So you got obviously you didn't get a finish or some crazy stoppage or anything like that. But you got a freaking devastating shot there that knocked Tristan Gore's teeth out, knocked some of his teeth out in that fight. And then in the middleweight bout, second fight on the standard prelims, you had a middleweight bout between Dante Johnson versus Eric Makhachev Jr. And you got a Dan Henderson middleweight classic here, because you got an H bomb in this one. So you got a KO punch that knocked Eric Makhachev, knocked him out. So he just went back, knocked him out, and then you got over the top with Dante Johnson, and he came over the top with like an H bomb, which was kind of an unnecessary shot. And then when he's like on the ground, he's like kind of coming back to hit him again, and I guess he kind of hit the referee. So like the ref was upset about that, and that was just at like the 138 mark of the first round. So you got a quick knockout KO punches by Dante Johnson's not KO punches over Eric Makhachev Jr. On the second fight of the standard prelims. So that was nuts. And then just the craziness continues on the prelims. You had a catch weight. So this was supposed to be at 125-pound fight, but you had Charles Johnson in a good fight versus Eduardo Henrique, and I guess it's a Scottish twister. So it's the specific version of the twister, the Scottish version. I don't know if I've heard that before. I've heard it before. So maybe I've seen the fight that the other one's been used in. I've just watched so many and I've seen so many fights, I couldn't tell you exactly which fight that it had been used in. So maybe I've seen it. But yeah, this was a good back and forth fight between Charles Johnson and Eduardo Henrique. But at the 136 mark of the third round, he put the Scottish Twister on Henrique and Eduardo Henrique. And yeah, he like triangled his legs up around Henrique's like lower back and like put that pressure up around his lower back. Yeah, that looked like a very painful submission. And yeah, that was a crazy looking move. And yeah, it looked like Charles Johnson was gonna win was winning that fight anyways, but winning it in that fashion was crazy. That was a nuts submission. If they still had submission of the night, there's no doubt that would have won it. And then I don't know what's the deal with the main events on this card. The main events on this card, I guess, besides the early prelims, all kind of fizzled out because then the main event on the standard prelims between was a welterweight bout between Chidi versus Joel Alvarez was a decision bout that was 30-27, 30-27, and it was a 29-28 victory by Chidi. And obviously it was a three 5-minute round, 15-minute fights. And it was, it was just kind of a technical back and forth strike fight. And just a couple hard strikes were landed by Chidi, but nothing too serious. Not a lot of damage was light, and neither fighter seemed like they were in a lot of risk of being stopped or danger of being finished or anything like that. But yeah, that kind of fizzled after the craziness of the first like 6 fights on this card. It kind of fizzled out there for the main event of the prelims. All right, so that was the prelim. So now then on to we actually made some picks onto the main card. So we already got our menu. So maybe we want to ask for another one. So can I get another menu? So now then onto the main card. We kind of had some predictions here. So our prediction for this was the bout between Edson Barbosa versus Esteban Ribovic. And we thought that this was kind of like a retirement bout. And it felt like it was feeding an old UFC legend to a young wolf, a young hungry wolf is what this felt like. And sometimes you get the great Rocky moment, and the guy gets the UFC veteran kind of gets set out on their shield, and they get the great retirement moment, and it's great, and everyone's happy, and or they like I said they get fed to the hungry wolf, and it's super sad, and they get KO, and they're slumped against the cage, and it's bad. And I don't know. This seemed like it was kind of a little bit in between because Edson Barbosa, yeah, he got TKO'd and he got beat up for like a round and a half, but at least he was still standing when the ref finally kind of stepped in and waved it off. At least he wasn't like knocked out like completely or like really like beat up like Crimson Mask like anything. But anyways, in the first fight on the main card, you had a lightweight bout between Esteban Ribovic versus Edson Barbosa, and Edson Barbosa Esteban Ribovic defeated Edson Barbosa by TKO punches at the 132 mark of the second round. And he pretty much was just nonstop, like coming forward and just basically just beating on Edson Barbosa, just like nonstop, like pretty much doing whatever he wanted to do to him, just basically just beating on him, like punching him. There was no like thoughts of a takedown by either fighter and just punching him and punching him and punching him until the ref basically stepped in and stopped it. And hey, like I said, he at least he wasn't like KO'd and put to sleep or like hurt like really bad, and he was able to have his family come in and have kind of like a moment at the end, and was able to put his gloves down at the end. So it kind of, like I said, it was kind of like an in between getting like absolutely fed to the wolf, young hungry wolf, and then having the great like legendary moment sent out on your shield, like great Hall of Fame like legend like type of moment, and like absolutely like having some crazy like Rocky moment, which we didn't have. Like, so it was kind of an in between of those, but we didn't get that. But I expected. I picked Esteban Ribovic to knock um, uh, Edson Barbosa out. That's exactly what I expected. I expected the young, up and coming star, the 30-year-old, to beat the 40-year-old in that fashion, because that's they've been doing that quite a bit. The UFC has been doing with these all old UFC legends. They've been doing that a lot on prelims, main event, preliminary cards, or the curtain jerkers of main cards. They've been doing that quite a bit. And then on the second fight on the card, on the main card, you had a middleweight bout between Dustin Stoltzfus versus Mansour Abdul Malik, and that fight ending in a submission rear naked choke at the 4:25 mark of the second round. And I actually expected Mansour Abdul Malik to be able to kind of have a comeback from his first. I think it was his first loss. I think he was 9-1 coming into this fight, and he's kind of known as kind of an explosive wrestler that has like really good ground and pound, and has explosive strikes to where he kind of can rock a guy and then get him on the ground and finish them with good ground and pound. And Dustin Stoltz was coming into this fight and had only won like 3 of his last 10 fights, and I felt like he had a chance to maybe get back on track in this fight. And this was the complete opposite. He felt like he was on his back foot the whole time. With Stoltz was coming after him and landing shots and having him rock pretty much this entire fight until he was able to wear him down enough to where he was able to get on his back and sink in the rear naked choke. And that was a nonstop fight where he was like I said, he was chasing Mansour Abdul Malik until he was finally able to sink in that rear naked choke. But yeah, that was an exciting fight by Dustin Stoltz. That was an impressive win by him, considering I don't think a lot of people expected him to beat Malik, especially not in that fashion. So that would have had me 1-1 for my predictions there. And then onto the third fight on the card, we had a lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Caio Fernandez. And I picked Jalen Turner to win this fight. And I kind of looked at both of these fighters as kind of similar fighters, both of them as kind of strikers, stand-up strikers, and both kickboxers, kind of. And that both of them kind of want to stand in front of each other and strike. And that even though Jalen Turner had never been to a decision, maybe that this would be the first fight that he would go to a decision, and that we would get maybe a good back and forth like kickboxing fight between these two. And hey, that's the complete opposite of what we got. We got the win. I got the pick, and with picking Jalen Turner to win, but not in the fashion at all, because we ended up getting a 39-second KO punch knockout by Jalen Turner over Kyle Fernandez. So that was exciting. And what was so funny is like during the whole like build up and lead up to it, they were talking about how Jalen Turner like what had maybe kind of like hurt his career and like leading into like this fight and how he's had like bumpy moments in his career is like maybe he doesn't really like to hurt people. And then he like KOs Kyle Fernandez in 39 seconds and like KO punches, not TKO, KO punches him in 39 seconds. Uh, so that was fun. And then onto the co-main event, we had a women's strawweight bout. So the 125 bout weight class. We had a women's strawweight. We had a women's champion Mackenzie Dern versus challenger Jillian Roberts, and I picked Jillian Roberts. I thought she maybe was bigger and had kind of a similar skill set and just uh, record history had kind of shown that maybe she had more knockout power and she height. She was maybe a little taller. Maybe she was a little bigger and maybe she was just as good a grappler. Maybe a little better. And so maybe I thought that she could win this fight by decision. And no, that's not what happened at all. It ended up being Mackenzie Dern pretty much dominating Jillian Robertson pretty much the entire fight, pretty much wherever the fight went. And the thing I was kind of interested in was who would go for the takedown first. And that was Jillian Robertson went for the takedown first pretty quick, pretty early in the first round and wasn't able to get it. Was shook off from it pretty easily. And then it was Mackenzie Dern who then was the one getting the takedowns and controlling Jillian Robertson then on the ground then for the majority of the fight, then after that, and then almost got the stoppage, almost got the rear naked choke finish at the end of the first round, which was probably the biggest moment in the fight. And then Mackenzie Dern probably won the first 3 rounds. Mackenzie Dern, yeah, probably won the first 3 rounds in those fashions. You know, one the fights, you know, they all start standing, so won the first 3 rounds, one them starting out with the little bit of striking that they start, and then kind of finished all those first 3 rounds, kind of finished them off with kind of on the ground, and then kind of seemed like in the fourth and fifth round she kind of went into kind of cruise control. And I don't know. You could maybe argue that Jillian Robertson maybe won the end of the fourth round. Maybe you could argue, and then you could definitely say Jillian Robertson won the fifth round. I don't think she caused any damage or was close to getting sinking in any type of submission or anything, but definitely controlled the round, which is just so funny because that's kind of similar to how the main event went. But something kind of similar that kind of came out of the Mackenzie Dern Jillian Robertson fight uh, was Jillian Robertson's uh, Jillian Robertson's coach, Dean Thomas, was how terrible he looked, how terrible their back and forth looked in between. Like that was like what in between like the third, fourth, and fifth round. How she just didn't look like she was like paying attention to him at all. And then like after the card, like what was it, the same night or the next day, he like retired, and then it came all the negative attention coming down on him, making it sound like he was trying to make the whole fight about him, or how he was trying to say like he didn't think that she could ever go any farther in her career, and that he didn't think that she could ever win the belt. And man, that looked like ugly. Like, man, he may not have a spot in the UFC as a UFC commentator anymore, or a UFC sportscaster anymore because of that, just because bad publicity for Dean Thomas on that one. But yeah, definitely spilled that one. Uh, definitely definitely wasn't right there. But if Jillian Robertson just didn't seem like she like I said earlier, it didn't seem like she uh, really didn't risk anything, didn't risk getting hit, didn't risk getting caught in any type of submission. Just was all defensive until like the very end, where it was like Mackenzie Dern, like through the last half of the fourth and all of the fifth were just kind of on cruise control. So that would had me at what 1-1 uh for the main card. So then onto the main event. We have the welterweight championship. So that's the 175-pound weight card. We have Islam Makhachev, the champion, versus the challenger Ian Machado Garry, who ended up winning that bout, retaining the champion, the belt, and breaking Anderson Silva's 16 fight winning streak, which he had tied. So he broke it and now has the sole record of 17 fights in a row. And he won that fight by decision. And that's a 49-46 ref, 49-46, and then 48-47, which I kind of thought that as well. I'm with these last two refs on both of these refs, for Mackenzie Dern, Jillian Robertson, and the Islam and Cheeto Machado Garry fights. I think you could maybe argue that Machado Garry and Jillian Robertson maybe won the fourth and the fifth round of those fights. But yeah, so the biggest moment of the Islam Makhachev Ian Machado Garry fight was the like the around the 2 minute mark of the second round. Islam Makhachev landed a high kick that only landed with like the tip of his foot, that landed like right on the chin of Ian Machado Garry, that dropped Machado Garry. And man, if it would have been like Makhachev was saying, if his foot was a little longer, or if it would have been all shin, that would have been a knockout. Well, definitely would have been. But these were 5 round fights, 25-minute fights, and Ian Machado Garry, it seemed like at times Makhachev was doing exactly what he was wanting, standing right in front of him. But then there was other times where Makhachev was getting exactly what he was wanting out of Garry, being able to take him down at will and just holding him down and not threatening too much for like submissions or anything, and not beating on him too bad or threatening too much with any type of ground and pound that looked like it was in any real danger of finishing him. But the weird thing with Ian Machado Garry was it just seemed like he was just kind of standing like right in front of him. Like he had like real like no motion or anything. Like he wasn't trying to like open up any type of shots of his own like he was, and until like the end of the fight. Just like Jillian Robertson at the end of the fight, it looked like he landed some shots and maybe caught Makhachev with something that maybe caught his attention a little bit. But it's just kind of too little, too late, with those fights. But it's just both of those fights were just very similar, very similar. Just the difference was Ian Machado Garry's ended with him kind of controlling the fight, standing, and then Jillian Robertson ended controlling the fight on the ground. Uh, but just not overly exciting fights to watch, but definitely showed that Ian Machado Garry and Jillian Robertson, I guess, deserved to be in there because Islam Makhachev and Mackenzie Dern weren't able to finish them. But I picked Islam Makhachev to defeat uh, Ian Machado Garry, but I thought he was going to absolutely just bulldoze through him. I thought he was going to be able to choke him out. I thought he was going to submit him with some kind of choke of some sort. But this fight really showed me this fight, and now uh, this fight and his fight against let's see, I can find it. This fight and his fight against Jack Della Maddalena has really showed me that he's not dominating and absolutely bulldozing welterweight. So before long, whether it's age or he just runs into to a guy that's bigger and stronger, or just younger and has more knockout power, or is just stronger, or has more talent on the ground, or like I said, just age is going to run into that eventually if he doesn't retire before he wins 20. I think he said he wants to win 20 or 20 fights in a row to kind of set that bar. So I think if he doesn't go back down to 155, someone eventually is going to beat him at 170 because he's not absolutely dominating people at 170. He didn't absolutely destroy Ian Machado Garry, and he didn't beat Renato Moicano either. I guess I'm thinking I'm saying that name wrong. Yeah, Renato Moicano, not Renato Moicano, but Jack Della Maddalena. But anyway, so that's UFC 330. Like I said, the prelims, honestly, and then even the undercard of the main card to build up to the co-main event were honestly better. And hey, that's as UFC fans, and definitely since the UFC has moved to Paramount Plus, that's something that's been pretty common. But let's get into bonus awards, and let's look at UFC 331. We'll get up out of here. But so for bonus awards, the following fighters received $100,000 bonuses. So I'm talking. There's a couple fights that went five, the two, the co and the main event, and the two title fights. They went 5 rounds, and so 5 minute round, 25-minute rounds. There still was no, there was still no fight of the night. So that kind of tells you those weren't great fights. But there was a couple of performances of the nights. Jalen Turner, his 29-second knockout. Dustin Stoltz was his upset rear naked choke win. Charlie Johnson's the Scottish Twister, and Jeremiah Wells, which was the biggest upset of the night, the plus 1200 upset to start the night with that ninja choke over Orabal to start the night. So yeah, it's definitely those guys. There's probably even more people that deserve the night because there was some crazy, lots of crazy stoppages and finishes to start all mixed into this card. So definitely lots of good lots of good, actually lots of good fight nights even before we even get to UFC 331. See if we can get to it. UFC 330, UFC 331. So this is September 19th. So exactly a month from today is at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, California. And this is Joshua Van versus Pantoja for the flyweight championship. So that's for the and that's two. So that was after that was when Pantoja injured himself. So that's for the rematch. Alexander Pantoja try to get his belt back, and then undercard Arman Sarukian versus Mauricio Ruffy lightweight bout. Patricio Pitbull versus Chu Dohoy, Renato Moicano. There's Renato Moicano. I knew he's talking somewhere coming. And then Brian Ortega, lightweight, and then light heavyweight Alonzo Menifield versus Iowa Brown Nowitzki. So even yeah, I mean that's okay. I'd say that's even though that doesn't have two title fights, that's even looks more of an exciting card, just name recognition, star power, even than UFC 330. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be as good of a card, just because of how good the results of UFC 330 were. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?